Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Mind Your Nest. I'm your host, Jennifer Rosen, and I come to you on this beautiful Florida sunny day with a little bit of a tickle in my throat. I was recently in Chicago, and I went from 80 degrees to like 15 degrees, and then I got back a few days ago. So, the weather kind of had a little impact on me, but I'm surviving. I have my throat lozenges and I'm drinking hot tea and everything's good here. So there's so many things that we could talk about, obviously. And I kind of wanted to pick up on the previous conversation, really talking about family conversations, uncomfortable conversations, talking about sensitive topics for which there are many in a family, and wanting to bring things up when you're together for the holidays, for a birthday, for brunch, for lunch, celebrating a birthday, whatever. And how we can choose to open up the door and ease into some uncomfortable topics. Sometimes it's easier to bring sensitive topics up when a family member is ill, when a family member is in a hospital, recovering from a procedure, recovering from surgery. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe they're in a life transition. Because those seem to be kind of like the right time, to have a talk. Hey, let's sit down and chat. Mom's in the hospital. I want us all to be on the same page about her prognosis and aftercare and all that stuff. Or mom's in the hospital and she's not doing well. And it's time for us to get together and have a family talk. Now, I will say that exact situation can be a blessing or it can be a curse. Now, we've talked about before how family dynamics are unique and not every relationship within a family structure is the same. 2 children living under the same roof are not the same. 3 children, 4 children, however many children you have living under one roof, they are not the same. And when you throw in potentially a stepchild into the mix or a mixed family, forget about it. It's very challenging to figure out, well, who should speak for the family? Who should speak for my ailing mother? So when you think about it, for those people that have planned and have their living will, their advance directive, their medical power of attorney, their power of attorney, you automatically assume that the power of attorney has the final say, which is a true statement. However, that doesn't negate the opinions and the thoughts and the concerns and questions that the other family members might have. What it does do, in a positive light, it gives you the opportunity to start talking with each other and hopefully not talking to each other. Now, I've talked about this in great length about how my father's illness many years ago really opened up the lines of communication between my brothers and my dad. And I've also talked about how unique our relationship was. But that was driven by the pilot of our family, which was my dad. This is how he wanted things to go. We took his direction. We followed suit. That didn't necessarily mean that we agreed with everything that was coming out of his mouth. But what his openness and wanting to have real conversation with his children about the inevitability of his passing did is it allowed each of us to voice our concerns, our questions, our, well, who's going to be in charge? Who gets your watch? Who gets all of your Cubs paraphernalia? Who gets this? Who gets that? And it made my father's passing and the conversations after that a little less intense. It wasn't as heated. There wasn't so much acrimony between my brothers and I. We kind of already figured it out. And I will say, from my perspective, in my experience, that being the only girl made it a lot easier. My brothers and I were on the same page. My desire to have certain things was way different than theirs, and that was great. We did the same thing for my mother, and thank goodness she's still alive and well at the ripe old age of 85. I just saw her. My kids and I had brunch with her, and she's going to be 86 in March. I mean, she looks amazing. She was wearing the cutest sweater, and she got it Nordstrom Rack, and my kids and I couldn't stop complimenting her. So my dad kind of laid the groundwork for being able to have these types of conversation. And I'm not saying that every little side conversation or follow-up conversation was rainbows and bubblegum, but it allowed all of us to follow up and have side conversations when we felt like, let's say, we just wanted to have a conversation with one-on-one. We didn't want to have a conversation with a group. So we've been able to have those talks with my mom, and it's been wonderful, and thank God for that. And she's just as amenable as my dad was when he first opened the door to this many years ago. As we know, not all families are like that. I have several friends whose parents were divorced. The fathers got remarried. The fathers had children with the new wife. And I don't know how to say this diplomatically, so I'm just going to say it, and please don't be offended, but the original children now felt like the redheaded stepchildren, and that they really took a back seat to the new family dynamic. And that was and is still, even post-death, very hurtful, very painful. And when all of this was happening with a couple of my girlfriends, they didn't feel comfortable enough with their relationship with their father, the one that was now in a new relationship and about to get remarried, to have those conversations. You know, you initially feel that even asking a question makes you look like you are greedy. All you want is the money or whatever you may or may not inherit. Or maybe there's a car, or maybe there's a watch that you've been eyeing that your dad has worn his whole life. Maybe he's got a coin collection. Maybe he's got a boat. Maybe he has a condo. Maybe he's got a gazillion other things. And for some reason, there's something in you that doesn't feel comfortable saying, hey, Dad, can we talk? Can we have a conversation? Just the two of you, one-on-one, where you can let him know that you're afraid. You're concerned. You don't know how you feel about opening up this door to have with him. Inquiring, are you allowed to ask questions? Are you allowed to know what his personal financial situation is? Is he going to get upset? Am I going to be reprimanded? Am I going to be perceived as the greedy child? And unfortunately, for some family dynamics, that is the initial reaction. Well, it's none of your business what you may or may not get when I die. It's personal. I'm not sharing that with you. I don't feel comfortable talking with you about it. Or let's have a family meeting, to which you might say, okay, which family are we going to be meeting with? Are we meeting with the original family, or are we meeting with now the new combined family? I would suggest that whatever the answers to those questions are, to not be afraid and to not be scared to ask your mom or dad, to have a talk, to sit down, to come from it in a inevitability point of view, like I just talked about when I first opened the podcast, that you want to be prepared. Maybe you haven't gone through a lot of the things in the family home. Maybe your parents still live in the family home. Maybe your bedroom is still there. Maybe it was turned into a closet, but there's still a lot of stuff, sentimental items in your house filling up those closets. And maybe you finally are ready to ask the question, where is all that stuff? I remember when we had holidays and you used to serve the turkey on this beautiful platter. I always loved that platter, Mom. I would love it. Do you still have it? I would love if it were handed down to me. And who knows, sometimes when you have those conversations with your parents, maybe your parents honestly don't really think about it. Maybe they're thinking about part of the inevitability of, their declining health, but they don't really think about the sentimental items that you grew up with. So maybe you're doing your parents a favor. Maybe your mother never thought that you would really want that platter. For a lot of people, especially my generation, we grew up with china patterns. My grandma had china. My other grandma had china. My mom had inherited both of my grandma's china, and then she had her own china. And guess who didn't want any of the china? Me. And I didn't say it in a disparaging way. It was matter of fact. Those really special items that we grew up with, they met their need. They fed the family. They fed a loving family around the holiday table for many, many years. Sometimes we feel guilty if we don't want to keep those possessions. We don't want to insult anybody, so we don't say no. But I would say that while the mementos, the nostalgic items that we want to keep and hold on to, only satisfy part of the story. It's really the other stuff. The other stuff, the money. Is there money? Is there a house? Is there an apartment? Are there other cars? Are there stocks? Is there a safety deposit box? Is there another family that we don't know about? Do you feel that your parents are being open and honest with you? If you feel like they're hiding something from you, do you feel comfortable asking a question in a loving way? A lot of arguments stem from tone of voice, how we ask questions. Are our emotions running high? Are the emotions taking control of the conversation? And if that's the case, then maybe taking a few breaths and calming yourself down and really asking yourself, what do you want to know? What do you want out of this conversation? You might come to discover that there is nothing to pass on, that there are no jewels, there is no gold, there are no cars, there is no property. Maybe the house is mortgaged to the hilt and they have another HELOC on the house. Maybe their cars are about to be repossessed. And maybe there really is no liquid money anywhere in any of their accounts. And maybe they are in such financial straits that it will blow you away and you'll be disappointed and you'll probably be angry and you'll probably have a whole lot of other emotions that are fair and honest. But in the end, when we think about it, are we really entitled to inherit anything from our family members? A lot of people think that they are because of who they have as parents. Because, let's say, their mom or dad had an enormous, successfully flourished, materialistic life, and you had an idea that there was a lot of money, that you were eventually going to, which kind of calms you down and makes you think, oh, finally, I'm going to be able to breathe a little bit. I'm counting on inheriting X amount from my parents, and now I can pay some bills. And maybe now I can go on that trip I've always wanted to. What happens if that reality that you want so desperately doesn't come to fruition? And what happens after the passing of one of your parents and you finally are aware of the dire straits that your family was in, your parents were in, and now you and your siblings, if you have them, are financially responsible for all of it. That happens. It's a reality that happens every single day all across the world. You know, we want to believe that our parents, you know, for most of us, our mentors, our greatest teachers, people that brought us into this world, will always do what's best for us, the children, the beneficiaries, their legacy. But some people don't have that in their family. Some people are estranged for many, many years from their parents for a plethora of reasons. And it gets really difficult when the reality of who your parents really are becomes bright. And you have to put on 2 pairs of sunglasses because you just can't handle the reality of where your parents left you. It's a betrayal. How could they? So we hope, obviously, that doesn't happen with family members. But let's say you have a family that, and you know, the amount of money is really irrelevant. The whole point about this is to really have mature adult conversations about planning and asking some questions. Now, you don't have to ask specific questions. You know, you could start asking where some things are. Where do you keep all of your banking information? Mom or dad, do you have a long-term care policy? If your parents have an office in the house, sometimes that'll allow you to ease into those conversations a little bit smoother because you can go to the office and you can take a little bit of an inventory on what the office looks like. Are there papers strewn everywhere? Does it look like a bomb went off in there? Complete disorganization? If that is the situation in your family's home, then I don't know, that immediately for me would say, I think I want to talk to my parents about this. Ease into those conversations. What's this? What's that? I just want to help. You could also ask if one of your family members is struggling from either a chronic disease or they were recently hospitalized and were released, or they're about to go into an independent living or assisted living facility. You know, you can always offer your services because that is non-threatening. That's not like asking, where's all your money? How many bank accounts do you have? Do you have a savings account? Do you have an investment account? But when you come from it, hopefully, in an authentic, caring, loving way, that you are there to help ease the burden, it makes the conversation less threatening to your parents. Unless you really are estranged and there is no communication whatsoever, now you're just jumping in. That's separate. But when you come from a place of love and you come from a place of caring and wanting to know what's going on, hopefully somebody will receive that and want to open up a little bit. And from there, you never know. You can find out a lot of things, sometimes without asking many questions. But the goal really is to have that initial conversation in whatever format you can. Now, some of us siblings have better relationships with our parents than others. So maybe you don't feel comfortable having that conversation, but maybe your sibling does. And maybe your sibling is more capable of speaking for the siblings than you are. And that's great. Maybe your siblings can get together and divide and conquer and say, I'm going to take care of this with Dad. I'm going to talk to him about these 3 things. I'm going to talk to Mom about her recent hospitalization. I'm going to ask her if I could see all the bills, match up all the EOBs to the doctor bills, see if there are any outstanding balances, take an inventory of all the paper that is coming to the home post, like I said, post-hospitalization, for which there's a lot. Or you ask your parents if you can have access to the computer. You kind of want to take a look at what's been going on, just to peruse, not in a nosy way, but in an informed way, what's been happening. And if your parents are technologically savvy, then they'll probably have a lot of important documentation on their computer. Sometimes as people age, they become less engaged and less involved with their electronic day-to-day life. Maybe they're playing bridge or mahjong every day and they forget to check their emails. They forget to see if they have any messages. So you're really being a valuable resource to your family members when you offer your services, again, in a loving, helpful, supportive way. Now, plenty of parents are going to say no. Plenty of parents are going to shut you down. Plenty of parents might even insult you for even asking. And that's going to happen. And that's okay. But that first no, I don't want you to be discouraged. And I don't want you to take that first no as the final answer. I want you to do your best to reformulate the conversation. Maybe come into the conversation from a different light. Maybe bring flowers. Maybe start showing up just because. Maybe start calling your parents just because, without wanting to get anything in return. Maybe they feel like they've been ignored for years, and now all of a sudden, you're taking a vested interest in them. They might say, why? What's the end game here? Why are you so interested now in my well-being? Well, you can't blame them. As we get older and we get involved in our own lives and our own families, unfortunately, there are relationships that suffer. You're not engaged as much as you were. You don't call as much anymore. You feel like the other person should be obligated to call you and you not call them. And then you have, you're kind of sparring now because you feel like you've called enough. Somebody should call you. And that's kind of letting your ego get in the way of being able to have healthy relationships. Believe me, I understand. I'm a caller. I like staying connected to people. I text again. I'll text a third time. I don't really care because that's me. And I don't take it as a slight if I don't get reciprocated the same amount of time. I always say to myself, she's my mother. I love her, warts and all, with all of her faults. Because let's be honest, we all have faults. We are all imperfect because we're human. So my mother's faults don't supersede anybody else's faults. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve to be loved, cared for, and supported. I've learned a lot over the years by learning about how my parents grew up and what their home environment was and how their home environment shaped their lives. That's really important when you think about when you're a child and let's say you grow up in a dysfunctional house. You wonder, how did you get out of it? How did you shift your perspective or your mindset or your attitude and become this incredible father? How did you do that? So remember that just because your parents are your parents doesn't necessarily mean that they're not human and they don't have a heart and soul and caring. They don't have fears. They don't have shame. They don't have a billion other different things. They're just a human being. And I implore anybody, if you're have a conflicting relationship with your parents, a sibling, a cousin, a dear friend, and you really want to reconnect or connect or let that person know that you are there for them, then I just say pick up the phone. You'll never know until you make that first step. And one other thing, I think it's really important that you consider forgiving yourself. Now, a lot of people always talk about, well, I can't forgive them for whatever they did. I'll never forgive them. I can't be in their life. My dad disowned his first family, and now it's all about his new wife and the new kids, and I just will never forgive him for that. But what about forgiving yourself? Maybe forgiving yourself for feeling like that towards your dad. Because your dad was human. Your parents got divorced. Your father fell in love. He married somebody else. And a lot of times, those second marriages and the wives in the second marriages sometimes are the ones that drive the ship. And if you have an estranged relationship with your dad going in, then it might be that much more difficult to mend that estrangement now that he's fully into his second life. But that doesn't mean you should stop trying. That doesn't mean that you should stop caring. And that doesn't mean that you should let your parents or your siblings or other family members know that you are there to help them when they might need it most. Maybe they need help paying their bills. Maybe they need help organizing their mail. Maybe they're infirmed for months on end and they have mail piling up at their house. Offer your services in whatever capacity, because in the end, while you might still have animosity towards your parents, taking the next right step and doing the next right thing will inevitably bring love and support into your heart. You are doing the right thing. It makes you feel good. And life is a waste if we are continuing to hold grudges and not allowing us to let go of some of that and really be there for people when people need us most. And you actually need it too. When you give love and you give support and you give your time in an authentic way, that's probably one of the most beautiful ways that you can express yourself, by showing up, by being there. You don't have to be there every day. You don't have to be there 24 hours a day. But the longer you start showing up for somebody and the longer you continue to offer help and guidance to your parents or a family member that is incapable now of taking care of their own personal financial matters, the better you will feel. You will sit up straight. You might have a little bit more of a pep in your step. And inevitably, you will create a more loving, supportive environment for yourself. So, as we approach the end of the year, with Christmas coming, with New Year's Eve coming, while I'm not a New Year's Eve resolution kind of a girl, I definitely take this time of year to reflect, to ask myself what I could have done better, how it could have helped the people that I love the most in a better way. What experience, what knowledge do I have that might help my friends in need or my family in need? And pick up the phone and offer up that service. And you'll be amazed at the response. And you'll be amazed at the love that you get in return. And there's nothing better than feeling wanted and needed and loved. That's what matters in the world. Giving love and receiving love. It's not that difficult. So I challenge each and every one of you to think about the possibility of reaching out, of helping somebody that really might not want your help, but needs it. Do the next right thing. All right, my friends, wishing you all good things. Happy and healthy New Year. Enjoy the beautiful lights. And don't forget to mind your nest.